Today we're going to talk about kitchen design mistakes. There is a lot to think about when you are designing a kitchen renovation, when you're taking everything down to the studs, or if you're planning a new build and designing your kitchen. We won't hit on every single thing you need to think about, but these are the high points that must be thought about before you embark on this process. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Ashley, and each day I help frustrated homeowners make sense of their painting projects by picking the right paint color to blend seamlessly with the fixed elements in your home. I also specialize in helping those that are renovating or building a new home pick the right hard finishes that effortlessly coordinates well for a timeless home you'll love forever. Okay, let's get into today's video. We're going to talk about the number one thing you need to think of, and that is space planning. Okay, so when you are planning your kitchen, one of the best rules to follow is the work triangle. So this says that the sink, the refrigerator, and the cooktop are 3 points on this imaginary triangle, and ideally the distance from the sink, stove, and refrigerator should add up to no more than 26 feet altogether, and each leg should measure between 4 and 9 feet. You know, you will see a ton of articles about how the work triangle is outdated. This advice is tried and true, one of the best ways to organize your kitchen. Now, what I will say is you should consider how you use the kitchen, and a lot of the articles that you'll read right now say people are moving more into organizing their kitchen by zones, and I think that needs to be considered, but the work triangle should not be ignored at all. What I see happen a lot in kitchen renovations where they haven't consulted a professional of any kind, the fridge is often left out in no man's land. For whatever reason, it's like the fridge is a complete afterthought. It's all the way on the other side of the kitchen. You are running back and forth to the other side of the kitchen. There's no countertop space by the fridge, so there's nowhere to put the heavy items that you're taking in or out of the fridge. So don't disregard the work triangle. Now let's talk about work zones. So beyond the primary zones in your kitchen, that's refrigeration, cleaning, and your cooktop, let's think about how you use the kitchen. For example, a lot of you are in the kitchen at the same time. It's really nice to have a coffee station that is away from the main food prep station so that in the morning, when you're tired, maybe a little grumpy, someone can make their coffee without bugging the person who is in the main food prep area. Another example is a lot of you are bakers, so it's important to keep everything related to baking, your heavy KitchenAid mixer, your spatulas, all your flours, in an area that's all close together so that it makes sense and you're not running all over the kitchen. There's many other things that you can consider with these work zones, but again, it takes you really spending time thinking about how you use the kitchen and how things should be organized well so that you're not running back and forth. Another quick tip that I love is putting the utensils in a drawer that is very close to the kitchen table. You will really appreciate this if you have little kids who are constantly dropping their utensils on the floor, so that you can quickly grab a utensil without running back to the other end of the kitchen. Not paying attention to minimum clearances will really come back to bite you. A lot of you are renovating your kitchen. If you're building, you have the luxury of making the space as large as you want it, so you can it's much easier. If you are renovating, knocking down walls, a lot of the discussion comes around, do we have enough space for an island? Can we reconfigure the kitchen this way? The minimum clearances between cabinets is 42 inches. Do not go any lower or you will really, really regret it. Ideally, I like to see 48. If you can get 48, that's amazing. You can live with 42. Now, if you're a kitchen where 2 people are in it a lot, maybe both of you prep dinner together, that you really, really need to consider those 48 inches. Otherwise, you're going to constantly be running into each other and it gets a little annoying. Now, if you have a dining room table that is very close to an island or peninsula, pay attention to this. You need at least 44 inches between that island or peninsula and the dining table. 48 again here is better. Again, you got to think about pulling out those chairs and not being in the way. Okay, bar stools. I see this all the time in professionally designed kitchens. They want as many bar stools underneath the island as possible. I get it. You want to maximize seating. They've got those bar stools put in and there's like 3 centimeters per bar stool. That's not going to work. think about sliding those bar stools out, people getting in and out. You cannot cram all those bar stools. You need at least 24 inches per seat. So that if that means that you only have 20 inches, you need to eliminate one seat or your island needs to be bigger. It's as simple as that. If you're going to use the island to eat a lot, you really need closer to 30 inches. That gives each person enough elbow room, you know, to eat comfortably. So think about that. A lot of families use the island as their primary place to sit and eat dinner. Now, one thing that I see that's not thought about a lot is how much overhang you need to where you can comfortably sit and eat, or just be at the island and have an appetizer, or have a conversation with whoever is prepping the food. You need 15 inches of an overhang minimum. This is a big offender. I see this a lot with the stoves, because people want to put their stove over on one side of the room, and they really kind of want to make that a moment, which I think it's a great thing to make your stove the focal point of your kitchen. However, you need to make sure you have enough countertop space on either side of that stove for it to be usable. So ideally you want about 24 inches of countertop space on at least one side of your cooktop, but honestly, both is better. Okay, around your sink. For food prep, for washing dishes, you need about 24 inches on either side of that sink to be comfortable. More is better. Around your fridge, I see this happen a lot. I mentioned a lot of times when homeowners aren't working with professionals, sometimes when they are, I see this. The fridge is over in no man's land with nothing next to it to place down casserole dishes, or, you know, whatever it is you're loading or unloading from the fridge. 12 inches minimum, 24 inches, much better. Something else that I see a lot of homeowners forget is not measuring all the openings around their appliances. Make sure everything can be opened, all drawers. Fridges, when you're not doing a counter depth fridge, they need to have adequate clearance to open. Lastly, the clearance around your kitchen needs to be 36 inches. Now, this does not apply if you've got a dining room table that's right off a peninsula or an island. Again, you need closer to 44 to 48 inches so that people can comfortably pull out chairs. But if you've got an island that opens up to a living space, which a lot of us do with these open concept spaces, you need at least 36 inches for traffic flow. Before I go any further, I want to thank today's video sponsor, Graza. Graza has been an oil that I love cooking with. It's a high quality olive oil that is much less expensive than other fancy brands. I have recently really been trying to up my salad game for lunch. Salad gets a little boring, but using a high quality olive oil, and this is a trick, use just a dash of vinegar and then some avocado, toss, 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 you will love it. Graza has amazing finishing oil. It's called their Drizzle. I've been loving using this for my lunches. Now, one of the cool things about Graza, it's a fully opaque bottle. It's got UV proof paint that blocks the harmful UV rays, which ensures maximum freshness with your olive oil. And this can be recyclable depending on your jurisdiction, so make sure to check on that. What I love about Graza, it's high quality, it's always fresh, never blended. Single olive oil made from 100% olive, and it's all from one place, high in Spain. Graza is also made without any chemicals or additives. So another cool thing about Graza is it's this little pop-up spout that I love. It helps you pour just the right amount so that you're not wasting, you're pouring exactly what you need. So Sizzle's got a smoke point of 411 degrees Fahrenheit, which is perfect for grilling. And then when you want that finishing oil for your salads, like I mentioned, or even some desserts, that's Drizzle. I want to thank Graza for sponsoring this video. If you'd like to try Graza, you can have 10% off at checkout if you use the code Ashley10. Beyond thinking about your work zones and observing those minimum clearances that are so important to get right, you need to think about functionality, and this is unique to every person. That's why I say there's no one size fits all when it comes to kitchen design. Thinking about how you use the kitchen is so important. That's why I always advise people. A lot of people contact me, they're moving into a new house, they want to gut the kitchen immediately. I think that it's always best to live in the space for a little bit if you can, or spend a good bit of time thinking about how you use the kitchen so that you can plan this renovation to maximize effectiveness. So some general functionality things. You want to think through the dishwasher. Where you put the dishwasher, obviously it needs to be very, very close to the sink. If not right next to it is perfect. Also, the trash, a lot of people are using those trash pull-out drawers, which I think are amazing. I love getting rid of that trash can in the kitchen or the closet taking up space. Put it in those pull-out drawers. Your trash, your sink, dishwasher, all right next to each other, beautifully flows. And then if you've got a large amount of countertop space, right over your trash, just makes for easy chop with vegetables, cleanup, it's perfect. So when you are planning your dishwasher, make sure that you also have enough drawers, cabinets right there so that you're not walking around your dishwasher to put something up. That's something that a lot of people don't think through, and that's a task that you're doing every day. Some of us twice a day if we have a large family. Make sure that you're not climbing over that dishwasher to put up your dishes. Thinking about functionality also means a lot of things like this. So you're going to want to think about storage spaces for spices and oils near the cooking zone. There are tons of drawer inserts that you can really customize your drawers to have all kind of storage solutions. Now, a lot of these specialized cabinet inserts can get pretty expensive. Some that I really find are very necessary are places to store your cooking sheets, the large cooking sheets. Those always are so awkward to store. Cutting boards, and then so you've got those vertical inserts, those vertical slats. So a lot of the older kitchens, the pantry was not integrated into the cabinetry. Now the trend, and I think it just it really elevates the entire space, is to get rid of that pantry. A lot of us have those corner pantries. Rip that out, integrate that into the cabinetry. Now here's some things to think about if you're going to do this approach. You need to make sure that you have enough storage space in your pantry for all of your dry goods so they're not spilling out into other cabinets. You definitely don't want that. A lot of us like to store cleaning supplies in our kitchen. Do you have space to do that? Do you have space to store your upright broom or your Dyson? I know a lot of us like that really close by, especially if you have young children that make a lot of messes, or your broom. Do you want to store things like batteries, paper towels? Basically, you need to go through everything in your kitchen that you've got now and assign a place for it. A lot of things that I see people forget about in terms of storage are things like serving dishes, those large serving dishes. If they have a china collection or a vase collection, something like that, it's really nice to assign everything a home and then have a little extra. Don't completely fill up all of your storage with everything you have in your kitchen now, because you have to know you're going to live and grow with this kitchen, and as you do that, you will collect more items. If you don't think through outlet placement and what you're going to do to conceal these outlets, because code requires that you have to have them, okay? These are not optional at all, and codes are different everywhere depending on where you live, so you need to check with your local code office. We can't get around them. There are ways to conceal them. There's ways to integrate them. Let's talk about some of the solutions. So one of the things that people stress about a lot is outlets in your backsplash. So one of the best things that you can do is simply turn a typical vertical outlet horizontally, and that is really great in terms of not really disrupting that beautiful visual impact you've got with your backsplash. You can also consider the clear outlets. There's outlets that are gorgeous. They're in brass. Sometimes you can paint your outlet to look exactly like your backsplash tile. You can also use round outlets, smaller round outlets that are a little bit more discreet. Now, a lot of people will they'll say, well, I don't want outlets disrupting my backsplash. What I'll do is I'll put the outlets underneath the cabinets. Up at the top. So what I always caution people with is there's no way to hide when you want to plug stuff in, and a lot of you have little lamps sitting on your countertops permanently, or your coffee maker, whatever. You're going to have that black cord going up to the top of your cabinets all the time. I think that's pretty unsightly. Let's talk about outlets on the island. This is really very annoying because you've got this beautiful stone. Who wants to interrupt the beautiful stone for an outlet? Now, international building codes have changed recently. A lot of local codes are not adopting this, but typically, historically, we have put outlets on the side of the island. Now, the building codes are now saying the outlet needs to be on top of the countertop. A lot of people have issue with this because again, it breaks up that beautiful countertop, but there are ways that you can get around that. I'll show you some examples. But again, you need to check with your local code because just because international code has changed, again, a lot of local code offices are not enforcing this yet. I get a lot of questions on pendant spacing. How many pendants should I do? How far apart should they be? There are some basic ground rules to follow when it comes to pendant spacing. And before we talk about this, if you've got a 7.5 foot ceiling or 8 foot ceiling in a kitchen, sometimes pendants, because your ceilings are a little bit lower, they're going to visually impact the space too much. It's totally okay to forego the pendants. That's what I've done in my kitchen. I like the openness. We only have 8 foot ceilings, so pendants were something that I didn't want to do. Now I've toyed with adding them, and I might. And if you have 8 foot ceilings like I do, the clear glass pendants or the pendants that don't have a dome kind of obstructing the view is best. Okay, let's talk about some common dimensions, some rules of thumb that you need to follow. So pendants should be spaced between 6 and 12 inches off of the side of the island. And then you want between 24 and 30 inches between each pendant. And then again, so it's going to be doing math. Whether or not you can have 2 to 3 or 4 pendants over your island depends on the math. Then your pendant from the base of your countertop to the base of your pendant is 30 inches. And this is for conversation. You don't want that pendant blocking your sight of whoever you're talking with. So make sure you pay attention to that one. And then your pendant should be no higher than 72 inches from the ground to the base of that pendant. Okay, of course we have to talk about design and picking out the right fixed elements for a kitchen that flows well. So I'll tell you, one of the biggest issues that I see when homeowners approach a kitchen renovation or a new build by themselves is that they're so excited for this renovation. They've been saving for years. They've been combing through magazines. They have several different must-haves that they'd love to incorporate all in one kitchen. And what happens is there's no single focal point and the kitchen is too busy. So if you are wanting to design a kitchen that you love for decades to come, the best piece of advice I can give you is to show some restraint and choose more timeless finishes over things that are trending. For example, green is majorly in for kitchen cabinet colors. If you are not someone that has loved green for a long time and that's a color you already decorate with a lot, green is probably not a kitchen cabinet color you're gonna love forever. Zellage tile is something that's really trending right now too. It's gorgeous. I love the movement in it. I love the texture. However, this is busy. If you choose this, everything else needs to be very quiet around it to allow that to take center stage. Another thing that's really trending right now is quartzite. I love quartzite. I will always tell you my preference is a natural stone or over a man-made stone. I just like the look better, but I know that's not everyone's preference. However, quartzite is very, very popular. It's warm, it's earthy, it's got mixed tones of beige and taupe. It's very busy. It needs to work with the things in your adjoining room. For example, if you have the rest of your house is in that millennial gray, that cool gray, and then you're wanting to put this warm, earthy stone, you're either thinking about replacing a lot of what you've got in the rest of your house or having the items clash. So that's something to think about. Show restraint when you are picking your fixed elements in your kitchen, and you will love your kitchen for years, decades to come. Okay, here's a little point that is often overlooked, but range hood sizing. People try to save money by getting a range hood that doesn't have enough CFM. Now you need to check with your own local building codes, but anything at 400 CFM or less in our code jurisdiction does not require something called makeup air. Anything above that typically does require makeup air because so much air is being pulled out of the house with the higher CFM inserts. Now, because this costs more, people do try to cut corners and opt for a lower CFM unit. Don't do this. If you are someone that cooks a lot, you will not be pleased with how that unit is pulling the odors out of your house. Now, I know a lot of us that are renovating are working within confined walls. Even if we knock down walls, Often, if we're wanting a large island, either the sink or the range has to go in that island. I will always vote for the sink over the range, and here's why. So when you put the range in the island, you've only got two options for ventilation. You've got a downdraft, and that's just really not very effective as an overhead exhaust. It pulls on your flames, and as a result, the cooking service is just really not consistent or predictable. Then if you have the overhead range, it's really visually impacting the space. And it affects conversation because it's right at eye level. So again, I would go with sink in the island over range any day. Okay, these last points that I'm going to talk on very quickly, this is just like a brain dump of everything that I want you to think about. So just take some notes. I'm going to go pretty quickly. Something that plumbers always complain about is homeowners not thinking through all of the items that they want next to their faucet. So you've got your air switch for your garbage disposal. If you're going to have a soap dispenser, you've got that. If you have a separate handheld wand, sometimes it gets a little bit too much and things are awkwardly not in front of the sink cutout. So you need to think through that and the spacing between those items. Don't wait until the plumber shows up and they're calling you while you're at work or you're on vacation. That's something to think through logically. If you are renovating your kitchen, plan to hide smaller appliances. These are things like toaster ovens, rarely used appliances, maybe a toaster. You want to get things off of the countertop as much as possible that you don't use on a daily basis. So build your cabinetry around hiding some of those lesser used appliances. I am not all about completely making your kitchen look like a showplace and forgetting what it's used for. However, if you have the opportunity to do something from the beginning, make sure you plan to hide at least a few of those lesser used appliances. Something that people, they opt not to do because they'll save a little bit of money is not purchasing a counter depth fridge or building the fridge within your cabinetry. And you can do that if you go custom. Typically, this will stick out like a sore thumb if you have not planned around it. You've got all this beautiful cabinetry where everything's integrated. You've integrated your pantry. Make sure you plan to somehow integrate your fridge so that it doesn't stick out and so that you're left seeing the side of that fridge. This is something that's overlooked. A lot of us use our islands to have dinner, to have fellowship with friends. Consider an L-shaped seating plan with your island. Now again, you're going to need a little bit more space, and you're going to have to go back to some of those dimensions we mentioned. But if you want to routinely sit at the island to share a meal, an L shape is the best. With the island, not making your island look custom. Don't just plop down 3 to 4 cabinet boxes there. Make sure you have a plan to trim it out properly to where it looks like this beautiful statement piece that it is. Drawers, drawers, drawers over doors. Drawers are so much more functional. You can actually utilize the full amount of space rather than doors where you're bending down, and you're not going to want to put things all the way at the end of doors because you don't want to bend all the way down and pull heavy items up. Always plan your kitchen for more drawers than doors. I see this a lot, and I'll put a visual because this happens all the time. Backsplash, your backsplash ends at your cabinetry line, not your countertop. Cabinetry line. Now, I love the look of eliminating the toe kicks in the kitchen. I think it's gorgeous. It looks like built-in cabinetry. It looks like furniture. However, when you eliminate the toe kicks in your kitchen, your entire center of gravity is now 4 to 5 inches further from the sink or the work area. So you will have to lean over further to cook and prepare food. Trust me, your back is not going to love this decision. There's a way to integrate it where spaces that you're using less for prep zones, you can do this. You can do a mix, and that's what I would advise if you really kind of like that look. If you can, take the tile all the way up to the ceiling. It is such an elevated look. If you're going to go with stainless steel appliances, make sure you look for those that have fingerprint resistant coating. Otherwise, you are going to hate the look of these and you're going to constantly be cleaning them. Another thing I see people do a lot is eliminating too many upper cabinets and then just doing shelves. This is an issue because you've either got to perfectly curate those shelves or your kitchen is just going to look busy because you have to have too much to store on those shelves. Now, if you don't say you don't want the look of shelves, so you just don't do that, maybe you have just 1 or 2 upper cabinets, you're going to be storing your glasses and things that are awkward to bend down to get in your lowers, and that's just not a good thing. Make sure you don't eliminate too many cabinets. And again, this goes back to assigning a place for everything, and that takes some thought. Here's one of my pet peeves: going with a material that's going to show wear and tear if you are someone that doesn't like the way items patina. So I'm talking about marble, soapstone, butcher block, unlacquered brass. All of these items are gorgeous natural materials, but they show wear and tear. You need to be okay with how they show wear and tear, or else you're not going to like them in your kitchen. We talked about a lot. Again, we did not cover everything because this would have been hours, but I hope that you learned something if you are planning a new build or renovating your kitchen, so that you kind of have some groundwork. Thanks for watching.